Today I'm going to talk about starting this straightforward torsion pattern. It's one that I give to my students when I teach them in person, as they're probably the second piece of lace, so it's quite a straightforward one. It has cloth stitch in the outside edge in the fans, and it also has torsion ground in the middle as a filling, and these two components teach the students how to start reading a pattern. So I'm going to start with 2 temporary support pins above the first pin to start the work. And these can be just at the side of where you want them to be. They can be in the pattern or they can be actually in the pillow, as long as they're not too far away from where you're going to work. The pattern takes 12 pairs of bobbins, so it's quite straightforward and not too difficult for beginners to get to grips with. So I hang 1 pair of bobbins on each of these temporary support pins, and I'm going to work a half stitch. Once I've worked the half stitch, I put the pin in the top pinhole, and then I can just drop those threads off the temporary support pins because they are over the pin now they've worked the half stitch, and we'll work a second half stitch to close the pin. I'm then going to work diagonally downhill on this row here, and each one of these pins I will put 1 more pair each time on the temporary support pin, and work a half stitch, put a pin in, and then work a half stitch to cover it. And this is forming the first row of torsion ground. Each one I do the same stitch, put the pin in and cover the pin, and the pin is always covered. If you leave it like this, for instance, that isn't covered. You've got nothing in front of the pin, so you work a stitch after that to cover it, and this is what it should look like. And continue all the way down this line of pins. Now the last pin in what appears to be this line is part of the fan, so we're not going to work that initially. We're just going to work the pins that have nothing, no markings on them whatsoever, because they're all the ground stitch pins. So this is the last one of the row to work, and this one will go into the fan once I get down to that. And then I come back to the top of the row, and we're going to start the next row, and this time we just put 1 pair in for the first pin of the row, again on a temporary support pin, just to hold it while you actually work the stitch. And at this time each pin now has a pair there ready to work. When you look at torsion ground, this is the pin next one in the line. You're always working downhill diagonally, and you take in a pair from the left and from the right, one either side of the pins. And to make sure you're working in the right direction, if you lie the pair at 45 degrees from the pin it comes from, it points to the pinhole you're going to work, and if you do that, that shows you the 2 pairs that are going to work that pin. Now all of the pairs should have this one single twist on it because they've come from half stitch. And we're just going to work down that line of ground using the half stitch pin half stitch. Until you get to the last one. Again, the one that's got the lines drawn on it, that is part of the fan, so we don't work that one. And this time we're leaving the right hand one out to join the other one that's there, and we just push those to the side of the pillow because we're not going to use those until you come onto the fan. Back up to the top again, and add another pair for the next row. And we're going to continue to do that for the next 3 pinholes until we've got the three lines of ground in there. Half stitch, pin, half stitch, and keep working diagonally downhill. With torsion, you're always working downhill. If you find you need to work uphill, you've made a mistake. And you've got to start looking then at what the pattern tells you to do and work out where you went wrong. The third one is now left out on the right, and we come back to the top of the line again. Put another one in and work downhill. Each time you've worked the first stitch and put it in, releasing it from the temporary support pin. And hopefully now you can see it's forming quite a nice little grid of stitches in there. One more to put in, and then we're on to the fans. And we're at this point we've got 10 pairs on the pillow. So that has formed all of the torsion ground. We now decide whether we're going to work the left or right first. I'll move over to the left, I think. And all of these pairs now want an extra twist on them because they're changing from torsion ground into cloth stitch, so we can put one more twist on all the way across the pillow on each pair. And that means you've got 2 then between the torsion ground and the cloth stitch. I'm now going to work the cloth stitch, and for this we need 1 extra pair, and this is going to be your worker pair. Your worker pair I hang on a temporary pin, but this hangs to the right of the outside pair, so it's just on the inside there. We then cloth stitch and twist. This means your work is now on the outside edge, and we can put up the top pin in the pinhole there and take the temporary pin out and just gently straighten it, tension it, and if necessary hold the passive pair, which is the one on the inside, while you pull it up. And then 1 more twist on the outside edge, a cloth stitch and twist. This cloth stitch and twist gives a nice firm edge to the fan and is only worked with the last pair on each row, or the outside pair on each row. So we cloth stitch through the next passive pair, which is coming off the ground, and put the pin up, having put 2 twists on your worker pair. And tension it. And cloth stitch back through. Before we do the last pair, we put 1 twist on, and then we do cloth stitch and twist both pairs and put your pin up. one extra one on the outside edge, and cloth stitch and twist. Cloth stitch through the passive and bring in the next pair at the next pin. So 2 twists on before the pin and put the pin up. And tension each. Hold the workers to tension. You just zoom out and you can see what I'm doing with the bobbins. I'm holding the worker pair, the bobbins, and then I'm just individually tensioning if need be, or just stroking. You should just be able to stroke the bobbins to tension it. Cloth stitch back through 2 pairs this time, 1 twist, cloth stitch and twist, and an extra one on the outside edge. It just gives a little bit firmer edge, and it means that the pairs around the pin have the 2 twists on, which are a good guideline. Cloth stitch and twist. The 2 pairs going round, or the pair of bobbins, the 2 threads going round the pin, if they've got the twists on, it just strengthens the point where they are tensioned around the pin. Taking 1 more pair in, and we're nearly at the widest point now. 1 more pair to come in, 1 more row. Cloth stitch back through 3 pairs, twist the workers once, and cloth stitch and twist with the extra one on the worker pair. And here you can see I just pull them out just a little bit, just to space them out nicely. Cloth stitch and twist to come back, and then cloth stitch through 3 and bring in your last pair in at the point. Now once you've reached the widest point, which is where we're at now, instead of taking 1 pair in at each pin, you'll leave 1 pair out at each pin, which will form the torsion ground when you've completed this block and the one on the right hand side. So the first pair you've covered the pin with, they are left out. So I'll put 2 twists on those because they're going to go out. And it reminds me then not to do anything with them when I come back across. Just a little tip that helps you work out where you are if you go away, answer the phone, the door, etc. And when you're first learning, every little helps, as they say. Now I'm just cloth stitching backwards and forwards. I'm remembering to put the twist on before the last pair in each row on the outside edge, and remembering to put 2 twists on the worker pair around the pin on the inside, and tensioning each time. So this pair is now left out, so I'll put 2 twists on and leave them out again to remind me they're left out. And each row is getting shorter by 1 pair. So this one's left out this time. 2 twists, I'll leave it out. I nearly forgot to put the twist on there before the last pin. Now at this point, this is the last pin on the fan, and what I would always do is to leave the worker pair on the outside edge so that you can see where it's left. And if you get into the habit of leaving it on the outside edge, you know where it is when you come back to that. I'll now go and do the other side off camera, this next fan here, and then I can just show you what happens in the middle, which is exactly the same as the top, but this time you've got all the pairs in there. Back shortly. I've now finished working the fan on the right hand side, and now I've come back to the middle. So a pattern like this, you would do a block of ground and then the 2 fans, one either side, but work the whole feature before you actually move on to the next bit. So I've now worked both fans, and we're now able to work the centre ground again. And as before, you take 1 pair from either side the pinhole, you work the highest pin, the top pin first, and you work diagonally downhill. So again, I'm going to go to the right and work half stitch, pin, half stitch. Having put an extra, well, having put 2 twists as the pairs leave the cloth stitch, as you can see here. We need that to separate it out and make the areas quite defined between the 2 different stitches. And whenever you put twists in lace, it makes space, it makes holes, which is what we've done with the veins at the side of the cloth stitch. And it creates a more substantial edge to the lace as well. Again, don't forget, don't work the pinholes that have got the lines drawn to them. So we leave those out, back to the highest pin again on the next line. Find your bobbins, because those 2 have just had a party and done their own thing while I wasn't looking. And then work the next line of ground. And this is how you continue down this bookmark. You would then do after doing the ground, you would do the cloth stitch edges, and then come back to the middle again, all the way down the bookmark. So hopefully by now you'll understand a little bit what the markings mean. The lines drawn on are for the cloth stitch, or you could even work it in half stitch if you wanted to, which will give you a very different look, but I suggest doing it cloth stitch first, and if you wanted to try it in half stitch afterwards you can. The lines drawn on are the direction of the worker pair. So if you find yourself going against the direction of the lines, you've made a mistake, and you always want to check which way you should be going with these lines as you start the cloth stitch. And there are 4 patterns in this pattern sheet that I give out to beginners, so the other 3 patterns I will cover in other videos. The next one is on spiders, there's rose ground, and there's also Brabant ground. Each of the sides are worked in a similar manner for the cloth stitch, it's just the fillings that vary. But it's a good way of trying out fillings and see if you like them before you move on to a bigger piece of lace. So if you've not done rose ground before, there are a lot of variations of that. I think there's something like 16 published variations, and it's always good to make a bookmark to try out a different variation if you want to use it in another piece of lace when you get a little bit more experienced. The markings are very similar and can be adapted if you want to use a different one. So while I've just been talking, I've managed to do all of that torsion ground block by starting at the highest pin each time and working diagonally downhill. So we now have that block finished. I would now go on and work the cloth stitch as I did before on both sides, and then you can do the next one. I hope that's been helpful for getting started on a torsion bookmark. Let me know, give me a thumbs up, a comment, and if there's anything else you'd like to see, subscribe to the channel and click notifications to hear of new videos when they're first launched. Thanks for watching.